Welcome back to the Two Promises podcast. Let's dive right into another exciting adventure with BD and crew as he pursues his new passion of one day finding the most epic bourbon. The Two Promises team send their special thanks to Hobie and the Huckleberries for their masterful theme music. So grab a glass, relax, and enjoy responsibly.
Baby says she's leaving if I don't stop drinking wine. So I switched to whiskey, now I'm feeling fine. Drinking that smooth, smooth whiskey. No more wine. I like straight bourbon. Baby, you try the ride.
Thank you for tuning in. We again have a very special guest. I have been so lucky to have some incredible individuals to come on the show. And today we have another author. We have Cheyenne. She wrote this incredible book, and she's a survivor. She has been through a lot of things that the normal person cannot really even imagine. She grew up in a very abusive home in so many different levels of abuse, not just neglected, not just physically abused, but sexually abused, and the whole gambit. She has been through so many things. And as she grew and as she matured, she found herself in a lot of these exact same abusive situations. And as she went through her life, those things grew and those things kind of multiplied. A lot of times there's that strange thing within people that they find themselves, I don't want to say attracted to, but other things are attracted to them. Those situations and those scenarios are attracted to them. And she found herself in this scenario so many times throughout life. And really, if you have not picked up the book, you need to check out Unbreakable. Whenever it says it's a chilling memoir of survival, multiple kidnappings, and a search for justice, it truly is that. She's been through so much, and we here on the podcast, we want to give voices to the people who may not be feeling like they're heard. We want to defend those people who are unable to defend themselves in a lot of ways. So we have this incredibly strong woman who is speaking up, who wrote this account, and who is speaking out against abuse, against neglect, against a system that in many ways, as we know, are broken. So I would like to turn it over to Cheyenne. Please introduce yourself to the audience.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for allowing me to share my story. My story really is going from brokenness to finding triumph, and I hope that my story will help inspire others. I went from somebody who survived a horrific childhood and miraculously survived multiple kidnappings as a young adult to being a certified life coach in college to become a mental health therapist. And I hope that my journey can really help others find their inner strength.
That's so incredible. You are a testament to that strength, to that resilience, and what I often also refer to as grit. So sometimes you can be strong and you can be resilient. And a lot of those scenarios, in my mind, that's whenever you're choosing that situation to be strong in, to be resilient in. Now, whenever it comes to grit, a lot of times that's whenever you're still strong and you're still standing up, but it's also whenever you don't choose the situation, whenever the situation kind of chooses you. So you have made extreme progress, like you mentioned. So we talked about being an author. Now we've also got this new lens. You're an author, you're an advocate, and you're also a certified life coach that's going out to help people. That is your purpose. That is your mission. And then on top of that, you're adding in, you're going through higher education to become a mental health therapist,
Correct, yes.
like a counselor.
Correct, yes.
That is absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And reading your book, your experience with education is not what the normal person experience whenever it comes to education. Would you mind telling us a little bit about your educational background?
Absolutely. It was very unconventional. When I was in kindergarten, my mother showed up one day and abruptly pulled me out of the kindergarten classroom. And I then spent most of my childhood essentially not being in any school. I was briefly enrolled in first grade for a couple of weeks, maybe a month, and I was pulled out abruptly. My mother was a severely mentally unwell addict. And so, with my childhood, even though on paper she had said that she was homeschooling myself and my older siblings, she really wasn't. Aside from the horrific abuse that I endured, it really was a matter of essentially teaching myself how to read. And once I taught myself how to read, books became that outside outlet for me. So I had really no educational background until I got my GED and enrolled in college.
Yeah. So your mom was, from her background, a teacher.
She was actually a teacher. That's the ironic part of it, is that she had been a straight A college student before she was an addict, and she actually worked as a teacher before she had children. And by the time I came around, I was the 10th child. She had already been in the depths of opioid addiction and mental health, and so she just did not want us in school.
Right. So that also adds to the plausibility of the officials whenever they're saying, oh, well, we're homeschooling. Oh, well, she's a teacher. So it was a very effective mask for her to wear to the world whenever in reality things were very different at home.
Correct. Yes, she never really sat down to really help us study or anything of that nature. I can maybe recount maybe 3 times in my childhood where she briefly sat down to try to teach me math, and that was it. In fact, one day she saw that I was trying to study on my own because she did not want me to get any higher education. She began to scream at me and tell me that she was going to leave me and abandon me because she saw me trying to better my education. And I hope that kind of sheds a little bit of light into the depths of her sickness and her wanting to oppress and not give her children the education that she even had.
Absolutely. And there's so much stuff there. And you just wanting to overcome, you taught yourself to read by watching subtitles. By whenever shows were on, you put the subtitles on, and that's what helped you learn how to be able to read. Is that correct?
Yes, it was that and mainly memorizing labels. So a bottle of ketchup says ketchup on it. And so once you pick up on those patterns of, okay, this is what it means. Movie titles, Titanic, Titanic, the TIT. And so I would memorize labels of everything, and that helped me to eventually learn how to read.
That is truly phenomenal. And the strength that you had and the willingness to be like, no, I'm going to get better regardless of the situation, regardless of what's going on in my life. I'm finding ways that I can do today, every day, to improve my situation and to climb out of this hole that I'm in. So, a lot of what you're saying really resonates with the heartbeat of my mission moving forward. I was very blessed. I was not raised in an abusive household, but I do know that many people were. And some of my close friends grew up in cycles of abuse, even in my community, that many people were not aware of. And as time goes on, they are getting voices. Blind eyes are being opened. Advocacy is occurring, but it's only going to occur with the strength of people like yourself raising their voice and speaking out against it. So I want to applaud you and say thank you so much for writing this book, for being willing to come on this show, for doing everything that you do for so many different lives to speak out against these cycles of trauma.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And another vision that I have is that we can break some of these cycles of generational trauma. And a lot of that occurs by one, people being willing to speak up to raise awareness, and also for us ourselves to do the personal work that we need to do to free ourselves from some of those chains of that trauma and that cycle so that we don't pass it on. So this is going to be maybe a bit uncomfortable, but can you talk to us about some of those abuses that you endured growing up? Because I think they're a lot more common than most people realize. And by hearing you say it, I think it's going to resonate with a lot of people who have endured abuses either in their childhood or in their adult life.
Absolutely. So I was abused in pretty much every single way one can think of. There was the mental abuse, where my mother would seclude me in our bedroom because she made me sleep in her bed and tell me periodically, pretend that you don't exist. No one wants you here. And to hear those horrific words on top of being secluded and locked in a bedroom, kept out of school for so long was just one facet of the mental aspect of it. There was also the physical complications from it. My mother used to force me to lay in bed with her for hours, days on end, and I now have a deformed vertebrae in my neck, which causes me chronic neck pain because of the fact that it was chronically as my bones were forming, she would have me lay in bed with her. And unfortunately, things took an even darker turn when my mother essentially forced me to be in an incestuous relationship with her. And it was something that took years of therapy for me to fully comprehend. I knew that things happened that I was not comfortable with. I did not want that physical intimacy, but I did not think of it as sexual at the time. And that kind of goes to show the indoctrination of the fact that I was manipulated. And I thought on some level it was normal to have this physical touch of blurring boundaries between myself and my mother. So she did many very vile things that we can all agree on were downright appalling. Also, something that my mother would do as a form of abuse would be drug me against my will. So, starting when I was a very small child, my mother used to force me to take small dosages of her drugs. And then on a couple of occasions, she gave me adult dosages of her drugs. So, from a very young age, I had already known what it felt like to be under the influence of drugs. So, there was a lot of different levels of this horrific abuse.
It is truly appalling, as you said. And these are descriptions of ways that these abuse cycles continue. So, from putting a word on it, like in a lot of ways, you were groomed. You were groomed to be whatever it was in her life that she felt she was missing, whatever it was that she did not have, but in her mind she felt she needed. So, instead of finding the healthy adult way to express it, she projected that onto a young child who was not in the position to handle it, accept it, or for it to even be in any scope of the imagination right.
Absolutely, absolutely. I feel, and I mentioned this in the book, I feel that she was craving the intimacy of her husband, and he was never around. So I feel that she turned that to me because I remember being 7 years old and we had just moved into the new house. And she said to me, I was looking outside the bedroom of my new supposed bedroom. I was so excited. And she said to me, like a pin dropped, Cheyenne, you're sleeping in my bed. And I just knew in my heart that meant something not good was going to happen. And it certainly did not turn into something that was pleasant.
Right. Right. And so you said that you had 9 other siblings,
Correct.
and from reading the book, but of course the listeners don't know until they dive in, and I do encourage you guys, check out this book, read it. You'll have a much deeper understanding of Cheyenne, but you had siblings, some of whom lived with you and some of whom did not.
Correct.
And in that dynamic, it also created a lot of also unsafe scenarios where it wasn't just your mother or your father who were abusive in their different ways, but also you had a very violent family, brothers, siblings. Would you mind sharing some of that dynamic as well?
I would love to. So I had another childhood abuser, And that was my brother, who was 7 years older than me. And in the book, we call him Trevor. He showed really the early signs of being a sociopath. And I am not exaggerating in any way, shape, or form. If you read the book, you will read about the absolute horrors that he projected onto me during my childhood, including killing our family dog and trying to kill my other brother. He was so violent that, and I discuss it in the book, he and my other brother ganged up on my oldest brother on his birthday and decided to kill him or try to kill him. So I was only 10 years old and they got angry, and it's a little graphic for the listeners. So I will glaze over it. And if you want to read more details, it's in the book. But they essentially gang up on him and try to kill him. And it was a very violent, bloody encounter. And after having witnessed that, Trevor would continually taunt me, and he would say, "Oh, we're going to go ahead and we're going to finish the job." And he would do these psychological things that were horrific after I had witnessed this attempted brutal murder. But then also, he had this horrific, violent streak that he loved to take out on me in multiple ways. I remember one instance, and I mentioned this in the book. I was only 10 years old and I had done something that he did not like. I had gotten on the computer very briefly. And this was one of the few times that I was actually allowed to leave the bedroom that I was always locked in with my mother. So I was on the computer just for a couple minutes, probably looking at like doll photos or something very little girlish. And all of a sudden, he comes up behind me and he starts choking me. And not to be too graphic, but this was a really clear highlight into the depths of his depravity is he comes up behind me and he starts choking me and I can't breathe. And I'm clawing at his hands to try to break free. And he is the size of a grown man at this point. And I feel myself about to pass out. And afterwards, after he is done choking me out, I remember I was able to finally escape, and I look in the mirror, and he had choked me out until the color had drained from my lips. And I remember seeing that in the mirror and being so horrified. I was only 10 years old, and he choked me until the color drained from my lips. And that, I think, should show just how dark of an individual he is up until this very day. And something that I do mention in the book is that I actually had filed a police report against him for all of the childhood abuse, and the police have done nothing. And that is just another sign of how our justice system has failed.
Right. That is appalling. And just to kind of continue in this same vein for a little bit, the assault on your older brother. I'm trying to remember the details. I know that it was a combination of Trevor and another brother who was a little bit younger than him,
Mitch.
Mitch. And they used a object like a wooden plank or something. Didn't they strike him?
Yes. So on his 30th birthday, my older brother's Joshua, his 30th birthday, they decided to gang up on him. And I feel that the root of this was caused by jealousy because Joshua was obviously our mother's favorite child. So instead of celebrating his birthday, they decide to try to kill him. As he's coming to the house, they gang up on him and they break off the banister and they start beating him. And his face was covered in blood. And then Trevor ganged up on him and pinned Joshua when Joshua passed out from the beating and said to Mitch, as he's pinning Joshua, who's already passed out, his arms up behind his back, saying, "Hit him in the face." And they're trying to kill him. And then Trevor leans down and he bites Joshua's ear open. And I was only 10 years old at this time. Even though I saw this horrific fight break out and I was only a little girl, I actually tried to jump in and save Joshua. I tried to jump in and save him because I saw that what was happening was so horrific and so wrong. And I remember just being thrown to the side. And it's interesting because my mother was present. My other sister, who's much older than me, was present. But I was the one who tried to jump in and truly save Joshua. And miraculously, Joshua survived that horrific beating. But even after that, Trevor actually tried to trick my mother into bringing Joshua back to the house and said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mom. We'll never do this again. We want to see Joshua and have a makeup. And then later on, I heard him joking with Mitch saying, oh, yeah, we'll have her bring him over. Then we can finish the job. He was so callous. He wanted to kill him. He joked about, I bit his ear open. I beat him till his face was covered in blood. And he was aroused by it. He used to hurt our animals before he killed our dog, and he would be aroused by hurting these poor, innocent animals. And it's really disgusting that this man has never gotten any help. And it is even more appalling that the cops have done nothing. I actually had reached out to his wife. I write about this in the book. I wrote a letter to his wife on Facebook, just outlining the horrible, disgusting things that Trevor did. And she blocked me within 5 minutes. Like, can you just fathom how one woman can completely just discount another woman's experience? I can't fathom that whatsoever. If somebody reached out to me and said that someone I was involved with had horrifically abused them as a child, I would have more self respect and more dignity than to block them immediately. I would hear that woman out.
Right. And I think that is the natural response. So a few things that I'm hearing out of this is I really value and appreciate your natural response to be a protector, to be a defender, to even in the face of unimaginable odds against you, two grown men or pretty much grown men, and then another guy being beaten to death with a weapon,
Yes.
and you still try to jump in and protect the other person, to save the other person, even though you knew that that would be potentially disastrous for you. And then also speaking to the wife of this abuser, saying, hey, here's some issues. You need to be aware of it. Please seek help, get help. And you still had that within you to be strong enough and want to protect other people. And that is highly valued. Thank you so much for doing that, for being that person. And then just kind of like dissecting this a little bit more, taking the scalpel in, peeling back a layer. From what I have seen and observed in various situations, is the abuse cycle for someone who's already in a situation like that. If they do entertain someone who might free them or someone who might see them for who they truly are and what they truly are, that almost always perpetuates and increases the abuse cycle.
Mm.
So for her, as a woman who is married to this guy, he is no different in that relationship than he was with any of his other relationships. She is abused. She is targeted. She is the victim of a lot of violence herself. So in any of that revelation, she knows that it is only going to get worse. If anything comes to light, it's not going to get better. It's not going to be a big exposition where it's like, oh, he's exposed. All of a sudden, now I'm free. No, now I'm exposed. Now he wants to hide it even more. And where is he going to project that violence and that anger? Probably right back at her. What I have seen, a very unfortunate part of the cycle, is every time you think that you're close to freedom and advocacy, it almost makes it worse.
That's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Would you, I mean, if you agree with that, great. If you don't agree with it, that's totally okay. And if you can think of some place in your life that reaffirms that, we would be happy to hear you share your thoughts on it, either pro or con.
I do agree that could be a reaction of her, a knee-jerk reaction to almost like a self-preservation. Now, also on the other side of the coin with that, it's written in the book a little bit. I feel that there is responsibility there as well. If you recall in the beginning of the book, I discuss how I went to go and give them both a hug and they both turned their bodies away from me. She shared in that. Now, yes, I do believe that there is most likely abuse happening in her marriage. And I appreciate you shedding light on to the fact that could have been very well a big contributor to her reaction. I'm a communicator, so I'm big on that communication aspect and wanting to talk things out. But yes, I feel that if we look at the grand scheme of things, it's just another way that the toxicity of our childhood affected us in different ways.
Absolutely. And so some of my hope for the future, we are doing this. It's not one person's effort alone, it is a group, and you're a huge part of that. And what we are doing is we are turning the tide of mental health care in the United States, and we are shaping a brighter and a better future.
Absolutely.
And it's because of your work, your effort, your advocacy, and the experiences that you've been through. And you recognize them as these big struggles and challenges that most people cannot even relate to. The neglect, not being able to be educated, having to find ways to learn how to read, and then also get into a college and then be an author. Like, these are major hurdles and major successes and major milestones that most people don't even get to experience, and you have just been knocking them out.
Well,
So
thank
that is a
you.
test. Yes, it's a testament to your strength, to your resilience, to your grit, and to all of these wonderful attributes that you're sharing with the world to make it a better place.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
And it is very true. It is very true.
Thank you for joining us today on this curious roller coaster of life. If this is your stop, please exit peacefully. Enjoy the rest of your day. If you're ready for another one, just push play. Just a final note before you go, thank you, and thank you for feeling. The distillation and aging process is different for everyone. I'm not quite sure what you're ready for. Sip slowly and enjoy responsibly.
Baby says she's leaving if I don't stop drinking wine. So I switched to whiskey and I'm feeling fine. Drinking that smooth whiskey. No more